Hey, good evening, good morning, and good night, everyone. This
That's a show.
is this is it. Welcome to Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing.
Hello
I
there.
I am your host, part of your co-hosts here, and name's Blue. And tonight we have a thriller for you, a deep dive into the world of season/series one of Obi-Wan. We're not quite sure if there will be more to BD, but gonna gather everyone's impressions, talk more about what we liked, what we didn't like, and see where the conversation goes. So we'd like to kick it over to my co-host, just kind of figure out what have you guys been doing lately? What's some hobbies been looking like for you? You playing any games, doing fun things? What's summer looking like?
Oh, I'm Cody, and I'm here as well. What have I been up to? Still writing a book and trying to solve a 90-year-old murder mystery novel still, which is consuming all my time between those two. But I've been also catching a few video games here and there. Been playing some Earthbound recently. Was playing Hades, but kind of fell out of that for a minute. But maybe I'll get back into that in a bit. And just bought Empire of Sin, which I'm excited to get into. And then we also just got Fire Emblem Three Hopes in the mail. So I'm sure my daughter will probably rip into that one before I will, but we both love that cast of characters in that world. So it's kind of where I've been.
Cool.
Nice. It's lots of gaming. I have not been playing any games, mainly because I have a sprained tendon in my hand, which I'm actually going to get a cortisone injection in on Friday. I'm quite excited about. But I've been watching lots of stuff. I've been kind of in between things Alexis and I are watching together. I've been watching this delightfully trashy show that was a Sci-Fi Channel original, but is now on Netflix, called The Magicians.
Oh,
which it's
That's
basically Harry.
Prestige.
Yeah, it's basically Harry Potter plus Narnia, but if everyone was a hot 20-something and they bone all the time. This my background here is an actress from the show. She's basically the Hermione character on the show.
Mm-hmm. Do you tell more?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's like swearing. I mean, it earns its a TVMA rating, so there's like swearing and gore, and it's without getting too much into it, it's literally like there's a magical college, so it's like a Hogwarts, but like in a more modern setting. But then there is also this magical land that has a series of books written about it that's like obviously inspired by Narnia, that turns out to be real. And
Yes.
also everyone fucks all the time, so it's good times.
In this universe, not to take us too far off the rails here, because this episode is about Obi-Wan, can non-binary people use bathrooms of their own choosing in this universe?
Ooh, I don't know if that's specifically been addressed, but I would imagine so.
Okay. Good to know.
It's a very, very open-minded universe. There are characters of all different persuasions, and I don't think there would be any issues with that. Doesn't seem to be a lot of bigotry built into it.
Oh, good. J.K.
Yeah,
Rowling,
so,
we know you're a long-time listener of the show. Just
fuck you, J.K. Rowling.
Oh, Elon Musk also. All right.
The other thing I just wanted to give a quick shout out to is a movie that is also on Netflix that I think everybody should watch. Like literally everybody, if you enjoy things that are awesome. It's a movie called RRR, which is a 3-hour long epic Indian film. And it literally has like something for everybody. Like it's got some of the craziest, most over the top action I've ever seen in my life. It's got, of course, has to be at least one big dance number. There are songs, there's dancing, there's romance, but the heart of the film is the greatest bromance ever put on screen between these two revolutionaries who kind of meet by chance and end up banding together to fight against English colonialism. And it's just like the most batshit insane yet amazing movie. Like,
How'd that go for them, by the way?
Yeah, how did it go?
I mean, let's not get into it. It's a fictionalized account.
Oh, okay.
But no, I
Is
mean,
it-
it's 3 hours long and it doesn't feel like it at all. Like it just breezes by. Alexis and I actually started watching it at like 10 o'clock on a Friday night, expecting to watch half of it and then come back. And we just couldn't stop watching. There's just no dull moments, no downtime at all. It's just like an incredible movie.
Does it end with the first
Nice.
Thanksgiving?
Anyway, you should watch RRR. It's a great movie.
But that's the letter R or like a pirate laughing, so we know how to type this in.
Yeah, we gotta be able to spell it.
The letter R 3 times. RRR.
Got it.
Okay.
I will say,
R
kind of an
cubed.
interesting note.
R cubed.
The movie was originally filmed in Telugu, but the version on Netflix is a Hindi dub. So it's a Hindi dub of the original, and then with English subtitles on top of it.
Wow.
So I mean, I would be curious at some point. I think the original version is only available on streaming services that most people don't have, so you'd have to pay extra for it. But I'd be curious to check that out at some point. But even with the dub, I mean, it's just an incredible film.
Nice.
Lou, what have you been up to?
Yeah.
Me and not a whole lot. We're getting ready to move here, so that's kind of been the biggest preoccupation. Getting back to the Midwest, moving back to Michigan. But with our free time, kind of dabble in a few shows. I was excited to jump into Obi-Wan when I saw it was live and finishing it up there. Haven't really been playing too many games. I have actually been starting we've been playing a lot of board games. There's a really fun game that's like basically a combination of Ticket to Ride, Settlers of Catan, and Dominion. It's kind of like a factory type game, and it's called Wingspan. Wonderful game. I think Cody, you're familiar with the Mariposa one, which is the same creator.
Yeah, Hargraves.
Yeah, Hargraves. Really fun games. So yeah,
I've never played that.
It's great. I mean, it's got several different expansions. You know, that's how they get you with most of these games, but at least they're quality. The expansions are just as well researched, and you play birds, you lay eggs, you get points. It's a little less cutthroat. I mean, I would say it's vastly less cutthroat than Ticket to Ride, and how friendship ending it can be. And same with Catan. So it's just honestly, it's a nice game to relax. Takes about 45 minutes in the evening, and yeah, been playing that from time to time.
I should also do one shout out for a board game called Chronicles of Crime, which I bought like 3 years ago and hadn't actually opened until last week. And it's pretty sweet. You use an app. It's basically a detective game, but like you can interview people and ask them about any evidence or other people in the game or locations. It's pretty sweet.
Nice.
Yeah, you feel like you're in the world.
That's cool. Anything to be immersive, right?
Yeah, and it has these little sections where you like actually look around the crime scene on your phone.
Oh, that's like AR.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
cool.
you're like in the world. It's not like AR. It's like, just
Yeah.
panoramic view of the room, I guess. Better way to put it.
That's still really cool.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, thanks for taking time out of your evening here. Let's kick this off. I guess really just opening. What were everyone's general impressions of Obi-Wan?
Sucked.
Hello there.
Hello there.
I'm trying to
I thought
be
it was,
Obi-Wan.
It was pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good too.
It was okay.
I mean, I will say going into it, it was probably the least excited I've been about any of the Star Wars series, because I just didn't think it was necessary. I think I mentioned on our Boba Fett episode that one of the things that bugs me about the direction Star Wars has been going in recent times is that it seems like they're just clinging desperately to the past, and there's this whole like literal universe out there, and I really wish that they would tell some new stories and explore some things we haven't seen before. And so I mean, my concern when this Obi-Wan series is coming up is that it was the opposite of that, kind of going back to the well, and I mean centering it around one of the most well-known characters. I didn't really expect there to be a whole lot that they would have to say in this show. But I mean, without getting too far into my personal feelings, I did end up liking it overall.
Yeah, I'd kind of echo that. This was a show that, just like Joe said, when it was announced, I was like, I guess we'll watch it when it comes out. Wasn't this supposed to be a movie like years ago?
Yeah, which I want to talk about a little bit later when we get more into things.
Okay.
But yeah, it was, my understanding is it was originally a script was written for an Obi-Wan movie that just never came to be. And at least parts of that were adapted for this series. Like, I know that the writers for the movie are actually credited as writers on at least a few episodes of the series.
Yeah,
Presumably
it's
they
Star
added
Wars.
more on top of that, but
Star Wars is in kind of a tough spot. Like, we looked at the Book of Boba Fett, and we kind of talked a little bit about the Mandalorian earlier in this show podcast series. But yeah, I kind of agree with Joe. Like, I want to see new stuff. I want to see new characters. I want to see them like not spend every last second filling in the little gaps of every character's possible backstory and timeline. Like, I didn't know that was needed, and they continue to stick with the same like family branch and timeline, which I think was part of the problem with episode 7, 8, and 9, which I was not a huge fan of some of those. And but then you have things where they do fill in the blanks, like oh my gosh, I'm blanking now. Oh my gosh, what's the movie? Rogue One, the movie that I like that you don't like.
Ooh.
Which I actually liked that movie, which
Speaking of unnecessary, am I right?
Well, but here's one of the issues I had. Like, we were watching like episode maybe like 3 of Kenobi, and my kids were like, "Oh my gosh, like, what's going to happen? Is Obi-Wan going to die? Is Vader going to die?" And you're just like, "No."
Yeah,
That was a
gonna
cool
happen.
duel.
I mean, that is an inherent problem with this series, is that there really are no stakes, because we know that all of these characters, or at least most of them, show up later on. I mean, I'm not familiar with like the animated series at all, but it's my understanding that the Grand Inquisitor is a character that shows up in the animated series, which takes place later than this series. So even though he looked like he got killed at one point, apparently people knew that wasn't really going to be the case.
Yeah, it was going to be a ruse. I mean, there's probably thoughts that the Grand Inquisitor was going to die, and then does that mean the Star Wars, 2 of the cartoon series, or animated series rather, Star Wars, Clone Wars would be like rendered non-canon. So if the Grand Inquisitor would have died, like, it would have no longer been canon according to the Star Wars universe. But honestly, I think I thought it was pretty well done. I liked, maybe a disagreement here. I liked a little bit of the Obi-Wan's backstory. And I think just Ewan McGregor, like, I could see him actually he did a really good job of, just got distracted there for a moment. Well, I don't know why, but yeah, I just thought Ewan McGregor did a really good job of like almost portraying an Alan McGuinness Obi-Wan. Like, I could start to see how the 2 actors have played them. He was really like, setting you up to see how Obi-Wan become a hermit, and the acting style actually seemed pretty familiar.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Ewan McGregor's great. I think he really did, I mean, he was great in the prequels. He was one of the best parts of the prequels to me.
Yeah, stand around and let your mentor die. Yeah, he's great.
Womp womp. But I mean, he does really kind of capture the spirit of Alec Guinness, and he does feel like, a more mature version of that here.
I'd be curious what order
so handsome with his beard and such.
Be curious what order they filmed the episodes in, or if they went scene by scene, or how they did that, because I know part of it was the plot, but I definitely felt like the last 3 episodes, Ewan McGregor really looked like he felt more comfortable back in the role again. And those first 3 episodes, he's very stiff and guarded, but that was partially the plot. I guess what's going on there too is he's like trying to hide his identity, but it definitely seemed like he, fell back in love with, or got more comfortable with the character as the show went on.
Yeah. I mean, old Ben Kenobi.
I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like that's
Ben Kenobi.
Like, I feel like some of the plot holes that maybe we never needed to know, other than like, why does Leia look for Ben Kenobi at the start of A New Hope? Why is that the case? So I mean, I feel
because he served her father in the Clone Wars.
It's true. That is true. I guess that is a piece. We already knew this, but I think.
I mean, we could talk about that too. Like, I think one of the potential plot holes of this whole series is the fact that in A New Hope, it doesn't seem like she personally knows Obi-Wan Kenobi.
True. Yeah, I feel like overall, maybe it was just a character development piece, but I feel like the theme of the it became evident in like the last couple of episodes, like the character flaws of Anakin slash Vader and Obi-Wan. I mean, it's, Obi-Wan gets on Anakin's case for being overzealous and, too reckless. And it's evident, even though if it's not like spoken out loud, that Obi-Wan's weakness is just being too merciful. Like he could have just finished it, but he didn't for whatever reason. So
What if he had?
Which makes no sense. Like, honestly,
kills Vader at the end of this series, and everybody's like, "What?"
I mean, that would have made the most sense. I don't know. I will say that. I mean, I do think the series is the most compelling when it's dealing with Obi-Wan and Anakin and their relationship, and I would assume that that's probably what the movie was focused on originally. And I mean, if I have a complaint about this series, it's that I almost wish it was a movie and was just focused on that relationship, because I think they tried to kind of shoehorn too many other plot lines in there, and they didn't all really work out. But I mean, I do think that the Obi-Wan Anakin relationship, that it kind of further develops, it really worked for me. I mean, it does not really make a whole lot of logical sense that Obi-Wan does not kill Vader when he has the chance at the end, but
yeah,
it does kind of make emotional sense that even though he seems to finally accept that Anakin is dead, he just can't quite bring himself to do it.
I also don't necessarily buy, what's their timeline here after this? We said it was how long? 10, 15 years until New Hope?
I think it's
Yeah.
about that, yeah, like 10 to 12 years.
I don't
Luke
buy
and
that
Leia,
that Vader
it's-
doesn't go look for him during that whole time period.
I
Yeah.
mean, yes and no. I mean, I understand that, but I also, it seems like Palpatine is gonna try to rein his boy in.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
Palpatine kind of knows that as long as Vader's obsessed with Obi-Wan, he's never going to be completely under his control. So I would imagine that he does everything he possibly can to kind of cut that off.
Because how old is Luke in A New Hope? Is he 18?
I think he's like 17.
Okay, so then realistically, this is 7 years before A New Hope, because Luke and Leia are 10, as far as I
Yeah,
knew.
that's true. So yeah, it's not too long at all.
Yeah. What else what were some other criticisms about the show that we talked about some of the things we did like, but what else is out there that you didn't partially care for?
Reva.
Tell me more, Joe.
Okay, so let me start by saying this. Racists can go fuck themselves, because there apparently was a whole lot of hate directed at Moses Ingram, who plays Reva in the series, and
She's
people are just
fantastic.
assholes. Like,
Yeah.
I think she's great in this role. Like, she's a great actress. Like, I like her as Reva, but I just didn't really like the way the character was written. I feel like, and this is part of why I said it needed to be a movie focused on the Obi-Wan Anakin relationship, because I just feel like there wasn't enough time spent with her to really make me care as much about her as they wanted me to. And also, like, in a show that's called Obi-Wan, that we know has that Obi-Wan Vader dynamic, like, I can't help but just want to see that and like not really get invested in this other character.
Yeah. I wonder, like, I have to think that there's some foreshadowing here with Reva.
Yeah,
Like,
it definitely feels like they're setting something up for the future.
yeah, I mean, the fact that, also would have been a plot twist if she had murdered Luke. It's been done. Like,
Yeah, like, well, and honestly, that's another thing I had issue with, though, as far as like how her character's written, because we find out, even though I would imagine most of us suspected pretty early on, that she was one of the younglings at the Jedi Temple, when Anakin starts murdering everyone after Order 66.
Spoilers.
Spoiler alert.
yeah.
But I mean, so she's, she is apparently, I mean, she's ostensibly for most of the series trying to bring Obi-Wan in, but then we learn towards the end that her beef is really with Vader, because he is an asshole and killed a bunch of younglings. So the fact that after she reveals this and like, Obi-Wan and her seem to have this moment of connection, her next move is to go to Tatooine and like act like she is thinking about killing or doing something with Luke. Like when her whole thing is, she's angry at Vader for killing a bunch of children. That just didn't
add up.
kind of ring true to me. Like it just didn't make sense.
So was her
Yeah.
was her motivation there just to like capture Luke and bring him to Vader to like get back on Vader's good side? That's all I could think of.
I don't think she wanted to get on Vader's good side. Well, that's the other thing is how would she know Luke was Vader's son or Anakin's son?
Well, they say it in the old movies that came out like 30 years ago, so she might have watched those.
That's true. Well, I mean, she does overhear the communication from Bail Organa, so maybe she puts it together. But I took it as she wants to like kill or do some sort of harm to Luke to get at Anakin. Like I took it as something that was aimed against him instead of like trying to get into his good graces.
Yeah. I wonder, like, I think there's parts of it that I'm hoping is like her aspiration was to be the Grand Inquisitor, but there was obviously a lot of conflict in her. So I'm like trying to think of where the crossovers here. We already know that there's an Ahsoka series coming up, and like Ahsoka's character is strongly tied to Anakin because Ahsoka Tano was literally Anakin's Padawan before he turned to the dark side. So that takes place a lot in the Clone Wars, the animated series, which is strange because Anakin's not even a full-fledged Jedi, but for whatever reason he has a Padawan during this
I was
time.
trying to do the math on that. I was like,
So, but Ahsoka was in The Mandalorian. She's, I can't remember if she was in part of Book of Fett. She was briefly on basically.
She's
on the planet with Luke.
Yeah.
And so realistically, there's some tie-ins there where I have to think that maybe there's a redemption arc for Reva, or who knows. But I just have to think that like basically the plot lines that are unresolved are kind of some of the Grand Inquisitor stuff, which is interesting. There's lots of fan favorites. I don't know too much about him, but there's a Grand Admiral Thrawn, which is a really big character in a few of the books and novels and games that are out there. He's a strategic genius, and so there's a lot of.
I've heard speculation that he's going to appear in. I forget what the series is called that they announced. It's got Jude Law in it. It's like another Star Wars series that's coming out. I think it's supposed to have like some younger cast members too. But I've heard that Thrawn's going to be in that series. Yeah,
so I think it just summary. I feel like Reva's possibly still going to be out there because I'm excited to see Rosario Dawson, and again remind me of the actress who plays Reva. Yeah, Moses Ingram. Like it'd be fun to see them on the screen together because I think they'll do a lot of cool things.
Well, that's the really shitty thing about this racist backlash against her is that even though I wasn't thrilled with her overall storyline in this series, I would love to see more of her in the future. If there was something that was more centered on her so that they actually gave her the time that the character needs, like I think I would be super interested to see that. And I just hope that the powers that be don't put the kibosh on any plans they might have had in that direction because of assholes online.
So are they complaining just because she is Black, or because of the way the role was written, or like the fact that she was
I believe there was a lot of like overt racism, but there's also a lot of kind of like read between the lines where a lot of people were actually attacking the actress Moses Ingram and not just the writing or anything like that. So just you kind of have to read it a certain way, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's like realistically, it's just no different than when Captain Marvel was cast as a woman.
Yeah.
Any of those things, like why is it so PC culture? Why is it even a topic of conversation to have good representation for film audiences and accurate portrayals of characters. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's a way of progress, and who's not to say that Moses Ingram can play this character.
Yeah, it's just progress. You're exactly right. I think the Miss Marvel series already has a little bit of that too. Is that right? Thought I've heard that.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. Which I love that series. Like, I don't know if you guys watched Miss Marvel yet. Like,
No.
it's probably my favorite thing in the MCU in quite a while. Like, it's just, I mean, the entire cast, but especially the lead actress who plays Miss Marvel and Kamala Khan is just like fantastic. And I mean, it's the visual style is just something different and kind of like a breath of fresh air. And it's just an amazing show. And yeah, I mean, there are definitely people being shitty out there.
Yeah.
For reasons not actually related to the show itself.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I feel like if anything, it's like Moses could have. What I'm hearing is it sounds like I'd say some of the shortcomings are probably on the writer's side here. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
You're treading dangerously close to one of the like most beloved films. And for me, the gap that doesn't make sense is Owen and what is Luke's aunt's name?
Beru.
Like, they tell him to run off. It's the sand people, and they tell him to run off, and you don't think that that's going to be scarring to a 10-year-old, like that there's almost a near-death experience, and he has no recollection of a woman or a red lightsaber chasing him in the desert.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I've heard other people bring that up too, but I mean, he's like passed out when she finds him and brings him back, so maybe he just like doesn't remember anything, but it does seem kind of strange.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I will say that the whole sequence where Owen and Beru were trying to fight her off in their home was kind of awesome. Like, I just was not expecting that. Like, I thought she would just like, take them out handily, and they put up a pretty good fight.
They were prepared.
Oh yeah, I was pulling for the I was hoping that there was be a happier outcome for the Imperial officer that was basically a spy for.
Yeah, I liked her. Oh, I can't remember her name, but yeah, she was great. She was the actress she played one of the whatchamacallums on Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I thought that would have been a really intriguing line, and it seems like what we're seeing here is kind of the precursors of the second animated series, which is Rebels, which I think will be really cool to see how elements of the future live action series pan out there, with like Ahsoka being a pretty core character. Obi-Wan makes appearances in Star Wars Rebels. There's some additional people who are like Obi-Wan Kenobi, like Kanan Jarrus, who was a Padawan, and then like also suppresses his force down so that like he isn't noticed, but then he's helping find or start the Rebel Alliance, which I feel like is leading right into New Hope and Rogue One.
I do kind of wonder, I mean, speaking again about Rebels and Clone Wars, all the animated stuff, and the idea of kind of retreading old things, one of my concerns is I wonder how much they'll use these new live action series to fill in the gaps like between all of these things, versus how much are they just going to rehash stories that have already been told in the animated series, because I would imagine that more people are probably watching these live action things than the animated series. I mean, myself included, like I haven't necessarily seen those things, but like if they already exist in that form, I don't know if they need to be kind of revisited in live action.
True. And then the motive, then you can easily suspect, is selling like toy lines and
I'm sure, yeah,
and subscriptions. And truthfully, like I haven't, I've played a lot of like the Star Wars board games, which have a lot of these characters, which is fun to like know their backstory that way. But realistically, like I think Clone Wars came out while either we were in college or at least doing our master's programs. So like, not saying that things that are kiddie can't be enjoyed, but it's like obviously a series that's it's youth 7, so it's geared towards kids coming after school and watching them when they get home. So yeah, I haven't dabbled too deep in them, but I have the same concerns that like hopefully they're more robust than just retelling of stories.
Speaking of kids, I have a question for you guys. What did you think about Leia in this series?
The actress or the character portrayal?
Both.
I think that
Um,
honestly, yeah. Go ahead.
I liked
Cody.
her quite a bit. My family had comments that she seemed younger than the age they said she was in the show. Like she looked like younger than that, and they thought she acted a little younger than that, but very worldly as well. So, but yeah, I liked
Yeah.
her. I liked her overall.
Yeah, I think she did a really good job of portraying Leia. You definitely see where the attitude comes from, like when Carrie Fisher eventually comes to play. Like, so I mean, just the backstory and
I thought the look was
You
pretty
know.
good too. Honestly,
yeah,
they did a good casting job visually. Luke was decent, but Leia was really good. I thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
You hated her? Is
What-
that what you're getting at?
yes. No, I wanted to. When I'm
And then you bought her doll. Go ahead.
no. I have issues with Star Wars in general, with like having CGI versions of characters, and like I have a knee-jerk reaction to anyone playing Leia other than Carrie Fisher, even if it's a younger version. And when I first saw her on screen, I immediately knew like who was going to turn out to be and what they were doing, and I was like so prepared to hate it and just be mad about it. But she won me over like almost immediately. Like I feel like the casting was perfect, and I feel like she really does kind of capture the essence of the character. Like Blue said, you can really see kind of how she would develop into the older Leia. My one big question around her, which I'm curious to see how you guys feel, is to me it feels like throughout the series she is pretty obviously displaying some force sensitivities. Like it seems like that's probably how she's so able to like read people, and like maybe even part of why she's so mature. It seems like that's the force kind of acting through her.
yeah.
And yet in the original trilogy, we don't really see Leia displaying any sort of like force prowess at all. We don't really learn that she has any force abilities, like for sure, until the sequel trilogy. So, I mean, how do you guys kind of reconcile that, I guess? And how do you feel about that, like possible plot hole there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like it remains a little unclear to me, is because it could just be like an aspect of the environment that she's growing up, like her family being politicians, like she's immersed in that environment and having to like be part of diplomatic missions, and so she's constantly like watching people. She like what makes her cousin cry, and like she can easily play the role of the politician. But I do agree with you that like there has to be something beyond that. There's some force sensitivity, which
I feel like it's kind of heavily suggested.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess in the original trilogy, maybe it's hinting at it when she finds out that Luke is her brother, and she says, "I know, somehow I've always known," even though apparently she didn't know when she made out with him. But I feel like that was trying to hint at it, but it's just, I don't know. I feel like she displays it more in this series than she does in like the entire original trilogy.
Yeah. The only gripe I have about Leia is like one of the first episodes. I can't remember if it actually does happen. But the chase scene where she's basically just running underneath trees and is eluding these like captors who were trying to kidnap her. I'm like,
The
how many
worst
times are you
kidnappers
gonna
ever.
She's
How
trying
many
to
times-
flee.
That's right.
But-
Flee.
flew. But she like ducks under trees like 7 or 8 times in what felt like the longest chase scene. And still eluding. I think that to this day, she's still running around and evading those capturers.
Yeah, that part was a little.
Yeah.
They were the worst henchmen ever.
I mean, honestly, if we want to talk more about gripes, I think it was episode 4, which is the one where they're basically spend the entire episode like escaping from the base, like after Leia gets, tortured or whatever. Like 95% of that episode just felt completely unnecessary to me. Like it literally just felt like filler. Like they just needed to, fill an hour, and so they just made up this whole thing. Like it just, again, I kind of wish it was a movie, but
Yeah, it probably is like filling in the specs of why they're looking just for force sensitive people. And maybe it does play to your point here, Joe, that either Leia could be force sensitive or it was all just a ploy to try and draw Obi-Wan out.
well, she also, I mean, speaking of, I think it might have even been in the episode where Riva is trying to read Leia's mind, and Leia pushes back, and like Riva says, you're strong. So like,
Yeah, that's a good.
that's like
good point.
probably the most obvious example where that had to have been her using the force to resist.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just a bummer because I would have loved to see. It's kind of untimely for Carrie Fisher's death, but I would have loved to see more like badass General Leia
Yeah.
Organa. And I mean, the books that are now not canon but were written after the original trilogy, like involved Leia becoming a Jedi, which would have been cool to see. But alas, that's not the direction that the new trilogy went in, which is a bummer.
I will say, and I'm kind of contradicting. Well, I'm exactly contradicting something I said earlier, but I mean, as far as that kind of thing goes, I think I do prefer recasting, especially younger actors in these roles, as opposed to just doing like CGI de-aging on the original actors.
Yeah.
Like for the Mandalorian, spoiler alert, Luke Skywalker shows up in the Mandalorian and Boba Fett. I would much rather have had them cast like Sebastian Stan, the internet favorite, or like some other young actor to play Luke, as opposed to just like CGIing young Mark Hamill and like doing weird AI stuff to make it sound like him. And it's just kind of weird. Like I feel like that would actually be a way that you can maybe make, even if you're using these original characters, still make it feel kind of fresh and new, is by actually, having someone who's the appropriate age play them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, what's the unanswered question is how much better did Hayden Christensen do this time around?
I was just gonna say one of my comments about this show, and a phrase I never thought I would use in my life, is I didn't mind Hayden Christensen in this show.
Yeah. Joe, what did you think? It's a mixed bag here. I feel like it was better than
No, I thought he was good. I'm kidding.
yeah. I feel like he the first two prequels and then the third one was just a crapshoot. But Jake Lloyd, he's had a tumultuous career after.
He'll always be Vader to me. Forget these other posers.
Yeah, I thought Hayden Christensen actually did a good job of toning it down now that he has.
Yeah, like he actually was acting in this. Like there was some nuance, and I mean, again, like I would have loved to have seen more of him. I think, again, if the Anakin Obi-Wan relationship had been even more at front and center on this show, I mean, I thought he definitely brought a lot of emotion to it. I mean, I had some mixed feelings throughout the series. Like it had some really high highs. I feel like it also had some really low lows, but the last episode like just really worked on me in a big way.
In a good way or bad way?
In a good way, like in the best way. And I mean, especially the final confrontation for now between Vader and Obi-Wan, after Obi-Wan cracks Vader's helmet open.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
But then when you get that scene where it's kind of like going back and forth between like the James Earl Jones like Vader voice and like Anakin's voice, like I just
Yep.
I mean, that whole scene, like that scene made the entire series worth it to me. Like it just the emotion there, like Obi-Wan seeing the remnants of Anakin's face, and the moment where like he apologizes. Like I thought that was a fantastic line delivery from Ewan McGregor. I mean, who's great throughout the entire thing. But when he says like I'm sorry for everything, like I got emotional. Like it made me feel some feelings.
I don't know if it made me emotional, but I definitely agree that that was the high point of the entire series. I love that as well, with the helmet that was slashed open. You could see, and just what you said, but the voices that kept changing. I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was definitely the best
And
part of
and a
that.
pretty good lightsaber battle there as well.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah, they kind of replayed similar elements to it, like the duel that they had in the Jedi Temple. They're like back to back at one point. Like did that again. Like it was pretty cool to see some parallels there in the history of those two's relationship. But yeah, I thought that was a pretty great scene.
Yeah.
And I
Actually,
liked,
go ahead.
yeah, I like my favorite part. It was just like you could tell it was a fan favorite, but the hello there at the very
there.
end, like that's like the ultimate meme. That was definitely done for the internet points. But have to say, like it was cool to see Liam Nielsen show up there at the end.
Yeah,
As Qui-Gon.
I mean, I feel like again, like you had to kind of assume that that was going to happen. I mean, throughout the series, Obi-Wan is kind of trying to communicate with Qui-Gon. So
Yeah, I thought he was going to show up at first, but he didn't. And then I had seen a spoiler headline in the news that said major cameo in Obi-Wan, and I was like waiting and waiting because I was way behind watching it. And so when Palpatine showed up, I was like, all right, maybe that was the cameo, but I don't know. But then, yeah, Liam Neeson.
I mean, it was great to see him. I also feel like that possibly sets up a season 2.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he says, something to the effect of "we have a long way to travel" or something like that. Like, where do you guys think they're going?
He's going to be a hermit. They're gonna catch up after the 20 some odd
They're
years.
just gonna go. They're just gonna go build a hut somewhere, and he's gonna talk to Qui-Gon's ghost for the next 10 years.
I think this is going to be Force Ghost, Qui-Gon, and Ewan McGregor. They're going to be buddy cops on Coruscant, and that's where it's going to take place. Be like
I would watch the hell out of that.
I know, it's like they constantly do jokes where Liam Neeson can't actually touch things. He just goes through them. He's like, "Oh, Obi-Wan, I guess you'll have to get the door for us," or something like that. It'll just be good.
Can I just add something here?
Please.
May the police force be with you. Oh, God. I'm just kidding. ACAB. Anyway.
Yeah.
Also,
I feel like the pieces that maybe do come about is so Darth Maul. We thought that he's dead, right? Everyone would have been convinced if you watched Phantom Menace that he's dead. The canon is that he somehow gets out of there and gets, Lieutenant Dan new legs.
Doesn't he get like spider legs or something at one point?
Yeah, and then he, like the premise is he's got like lots of angst towards Obi-Wan and towards the Emperor / Vader for the Emperor taking on a new apprentice. And so, spoiler alert, they took on Dooku and Anakin before that. So like Darth Maul comes back and he's like establishing another order to try to rival Emperor Palpatine's struggle. So like that's kind of the premise of, spoiler alert, he gets offed again by Obi-Wan. So I'm curious if that makes it's kind of a glory killing more so. Like, Maul is actually at peace. He's like, oh, he believes a lot strongly in the prophecy of like the chosen one, and chosen one being Luke. So he like, as he's dying, says, oh, I know that the prophecy of the chosen one will come true. So
I mean, if you'll recall, they did already set up a precedent in live action for the return of Darth Maul at the end of a little film called Solo, a Star Wars Story.
Remind us, Joe, of this little Easter egg.
Yeah, I couldn't get through that, so please tell us about it.
So I will say that I did not hate that movie as much as I expected to. It's not great, but I honestly thought it was kind of a fun movie. So in that, spoilers for Solo, a Star Wars Story, one of the characters in that movie is played by what's her face, also from Game of Thrones, Daenerys Targaryen.
Emilia Clarke.
Emilia Clarke, yeah, her.
Mm-hmm.
She plays a character who is like kind of an old friend of Han Solo, and turns out, well, it's a question. Turns out that
what was that voice? Can you do that for your podcast from now on?
What? She turns out to be tied up with a crime syndicate called like the Black Sun or something like that.
The rusty trombones.
Yes, the Rusty Trombones. And at the end of the movie, she has a hologram call with her boss, and it turns out to be none other than old spiky head McGee himself, Darth Maul.
That's right. That rings a bell. Yeah.
So that feels like it was setting something up before Solo was like a giant flop and everybody hated it.
Before Solo killed the franchise again.
But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, who knows if they'll follow up on that, but it's at least there that they could potentially use that to bring him back.
You raise a good point. It's probably because of Solo that Obi-Wan is a television series, because those have been wildly popular and not movies.
That's fair.
For whatever reason. Despite Solo having Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian. Kick-ass.
Which was awesome. Yeah, he was great in that role. I mean, after that movie came out, people were calling for, a Lando movie starring him, which unfortunately I don't think is going to happen at this point, but that would have been awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like, gentlemen, have we exhausted this topic, or do we have final thoughts on?
I got two last things here. One is I just had this spoiled for me looking on IMDb, so I'm going to spoil this for all of you as well now. They have Anakin Skywalker. I was looking at Hayden Christensen's film credits, and it says he has filmed episode 1 of Ahsoka already. So there we go. Or Ahsoka, I would say it wrong.
Ahsoka.
Yes. So
cool.
Episode 1. Apparently he is a cameo, but who knows? I could be wrong too. IMDb. 2, I was going to ask, what did you think of? I always forget his name. Kumail Nanjiani. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Did that take you out of it a bit?
Yeah.
He showed up, and I was like, "Wait, what?"
I like Kumail a lot. Like, as a comedian, I've enjoyed him in a lot of things. I think my problem with him here is that it's just him being him. Like, I think he needs to, pull like a Adam Sandler or, other comedians who occasionally take on more dramatic roles and kind of break out of the character that you expect from them. Like, I think he could have, played this character well, but I would have liked to have seen him take it just like a little bit more seriously, or just do something that felt a little different from his usual shtick.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought the premise was interesting, but yeah, I don't think the character development wasn't there. I would have loved, like, it seems he's kind of like the smuggler type aspect where he's in it for the money, but then it emerges that he's actually like a decent enough person, possibly, but then he's not. It's like kind of a mixed bag there, and
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. It did seem like he turned a little too quickly, though.
Yeah,
because he is set up as this like kind of con man scumbag, and then like all of a sudden it turns out, oh wait, no, he's a good guy who's trying to help people. Like, well, I think I needed like a little bit of a bridge between those two.
Well, he said even to Obi-Wan, though, like, I genuinely did get those people off planet because I'm trying to protect people.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah,
go ahead, Blue.
You had your scared straight moment. I mean, I feel like if you'd be confronted by Obi-Wan, like an actual Jedi, you'd probably poop your pants and change your mind about what you're doing.
That's fair. One thing that we haven't talked about, which I thought was an interesting concept this series introduced, was I think it's called the Path, which is that kind of like Jedi underground, system of trying to protect force sensitive people from the Empire. Apparently, I didn't register this, but I read it after the fact. The kid that is like there with his mom when Obi-Wan first shows up, that Kumail's character helps get out, is apparently supposed to be Corran Horn, who is a character from some of the Star Wars novels, which are no longer officially canon anymore, but he was in he was the main character in one of my favorite Star Wars books, which is called I, Jedi. And he's also a character in the Rogue Squadron series. So, I mean, it's interesting that they planted him there as a kid, which I mean would line up with, the age that he would then be to go on to be a member of Rogue Squadron. So I'm curious to see A, if they do anything with him in the future, but B, just in general, this idea of them trying to like protect force sensitive people. I feel like I always had the sense, and I mean, again, I don't have a lot of experience with like the, non-live action stuff. I always had the sense that by the time the original trilogy comes around, there really are not any Jedi anywhere besides like Luke and, Vader and the Emperor. So I'm wondering, do you think they could use this as a way to kind of backdoor in the fact that like maybe there were Jedi hiding underground all along? Or do you think everyone that's being saved by these people ends up getting killed in the time between the two? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm curious because I mean it's evident. I'm trying to it's so many timelines get mixed up in my head now, but like Mandalorian is before the new trilogy, right?
Yes,
So I mean it's clear that Ahsoka has lived.
that's what I was just gonna say. Yeah.
So I mean it's not too wild of a premise, but yeah, I think that's a really good point, Joe. I don't know that I have anything to add. I just think it's a cool thing they could expand about that, and that would actually be really interesting. But does it mess up with the canon of the original trilogy? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, either way, even if you're not worrying about that canon, like I do think it's an interesting idea to maybe explore in the future.
Yeah. Could have just been a little Easter egg too.
Yeah.
Hard to say on these things.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in Mandalorian, like there's plenty of Easter eggs. Like you were sharing like that was an Easter egg with one of the characters of your favorite books. Like, did you guys ever play the old game on PC called Star Wars Dark Forces?
Yes.
Nope.
It's like basically like a around the same time as Doom and Wolfenstein, but it's like a Star Wars first-person shooter. You play a guy who is trying to uncover, like, I think eventually he's like helping with uncovering Death Star plans at some point, but he discovers that like these dark troopers are being developed by the Empire, and those troopers appear in the Mandalorian as like the final confrontation in season one. So, I think it's cool to see like different little Easter eggs for people who have been longtime fans of the series. What sort of things they throw in there as bones for us to enjoy and speculate about.
They've kind of put themselves in an interesting position where once Disney bought Lucasfilm and they announced that they're making, the sequel trilogy, they immediately said that like none of the expanded universe stuff, well, it used to be called the expanded universe, because prior to that, all the novels and everything was considered canon. Mm-hmm. And when they took it over, they basically said that like nothing outside of the live action movies and like the animated series is canon anymore. So like none of the novels, none of the video games, none of any of that stuff. But they call it Star Wars Legends now, which means that like it could exist somewhere out there. So that's where they're able to kind of like pick and choose, little things that they want to bring in while they're still able to kind of ignore other things that they don't want to deal with.
Yeah, which was going to say, I think too, is to your former point, but like the main character in the Dark Forces series eventually becomes a Jedi. And then like
is that Kyle Katarn?
Kyle Katarn. Yep. So he's got like a couple other games beyond Dark Forces, like I think it's like Jedi Academy, some of the like
there's I
games.
think the Jedi Knight : Dark Forces 2 is
you
like
have to say colon every podcast.
I do have to say colon every podcast. Yeah, then there's Jedi Academy. But yeah, I mean those games are great. I mean, that was back when LucasArts was actually LucasArts and making some good games.
Yeah. Long and short though, I feel like I was engaging in this conversation with friends of ours too about like our gripes with the new trilogy. And what I'll say, just getting distracted again here, is like the disbelief, like things that broke people's concentration was that the span of time between the original trilogy and the new trilogy, like the span of time just seemed much more truncated in this most recent trilogy, which I think to the credit of Obi-Wan and a lot of these other series, I like that the span of time feels a little bit more spread out. Obi-Wan was a lot more, seemed like probably in the span of like a month or something like that. Who knows? They're traveling at the speed of light. There's a lot of physics involved in that. But,
boy, howdy.
Compared to that, though, I just like the pacing. I felt like Boba Fett was probably vastly slower than it needed to be, but I felt like the pacing of Obi-Wan was actually quite good.
You just don't enjoy a good tax collection show.
Well, it's time to go around and collect protection money.
Wake up, wake up, wake up. It's the first of the month.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Yeah, no, I mean, I do agree. I do still think that one episode is kind of unnecessary, but I mean, I do agree with what you said for the most part. Like, I was actually of two minds between like, did I want this to be like a 2.5 hour movie, or did I want it to be even longer so that it could expand on things even more?
Yeah.
But
Well,
I mean, even though I had some issues with it, for the most part, like I did not really find any of it boring, like except that one episode that I felt was a little unnecessary.
this probably had to be in Ewan McGregor's contract that he had to go underwater again and like nearly drown after the confrontation with Django and that whole clone trooper sequence. So like, yes, I if I'm gonna reprise the role of Obi-Wan, I need to have an underwater swimming scene.
Yeah, I thought 6 episodes felt just about right for what this was. I was happy that it was only that many, to be honest. Could have been 5 though. I think you're right. It could have been 5.
Yeah, tighten it up a little bit. Do we want to, or are we pretty much there? We're gonna
Let's rank
rate
it.
this? Are we gonna rank it against the other series?
Why don't we rate it first and then rank it?
Yeah.
All right.
So 1 being episode 8
Fuck you, Cody.
and 10 being Rogue One.
So we're saying 1 is the best and 10 is the worst. Then is what you're saying.
Well, it all depends what you're measuring, I guess. But, I'll go first because I feel like you two had a little more to say about this than I did. So I enjoyed this for what it was. Truthfully, it was I don't know, like a guy with a little kid for most of the show until we got that sweet battle between Vader and Obi-Wan that we referenced earlier. And then that kind of made the show, because I was like not excited for this show. Obi-Wan's not necessarily a character I necessarily care about that much compared to others in the Star Wars universe. I did enjoy that Ewan McGregor was back and seeing the little cameos and things of that nature. That's a tough one. I guess if I'm going to rank this honestly, which I always hate ranking stuff because people never rank like anything like 1 to 5 because everything's better than average. Like their average is not, they don't understand how averages really work. And I'm guilty of that too, but I'm going to go a little lower on this one. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. Total grade. 1 per episode.
Fair. I'd say probably a little higher than Cody here. I think mainly because I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt here that there's a lot to be seen that I think Ahsoka will help fill in. For me, I think it's just this was helping frame and set up that show, which I'm excited for. So I think probably like a 7 out of 10 here on this one. Probably 8 with the standalone moment that would have only been like a 10 would have been that final duel. But I think that rounds down the average to about a 7.
Wow, I feel like I had the most critical things to say about this, and I'm going to end up giving it the highest score.
Yep.
The
namesake of our show.
It had some really high highs. I mean, I will say, I feel like the first 2 episodes were fantastic. Like they released them both at the same time. And like, I was all in on the series after those 2. Like, I just thought it was a fantastic introduction. The next few episodes after that, I feel like we're a little more mixed, but that last episode just man, like
First episodes were great. I tell you, who doesn't like a good meat mining show? I tell you.
I mean,
yeah.
The last episode made me feel some Star Wars feelings that I had not felt in quite a long time. It made me feel like a kid again, and it was just fantastic. So I went back and forth a little bit on this. I'm actually tweaking my score just a little bit at the last minute, and I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10.
You went down, didn't you?
I went down a half point.
Mhm.
I originally had
You-
8 out of 10.
You go with 8, Joe. If you
Go
feel
with
an
an 8
eight,
if you want.
I'm gonna go with 8. God damn it. I'm
yeah,
gonna go with
like,
8 out of 10.
let's encourage you here. Like if it makes you feel things, especially as stoic men, let it make you feel things.
8 out of 10.
Yeah.
Mostly
10 out of
because of that
8.
last episode.
Moses, you get a 10 out of 10. Come back.
8 out of 10.
8 out of 10.
8 out of 10.
Agree to disagree.
Um,
Yeah.
and I was just gonna propose too. Do you want to like rank it compared to Mandalorian 1, 2, and Boba Fett? Where does
Yeah,
this
let's-
fall? Where does this fall on the continuum for you there?
Let's keep it segmented within series as opposed to feature films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
Yes, sir.
Go for it, Joe.
Wow.
All right. Are we we're not ranking the individual Mando seasons, right? We're saying Mandalorian as a whole versus Obi-Wan as a whole and Boba Fett to this point.
However you want
Yeah.
to do it, I guess.
All
Yeah,
right.
whatever format works best.
I got to put Mando at number 1. It's doing some different things. It feels like a kind of different story within the Star Wars universe. Grogu's adorable. Pedro Pascal's awesome, even though he's probably not actually in the suit most of the time. It's the only Star Wars property I know of that features Werner Herzog. So love the Mandalorian. Obi-Wan coming in number 2, not too far below Mando. And then Book of Boba Fett is a distant third. It had some highlights, which Cody and I talked about. And was that our very first episode or
Yeah,
second?
check out episode 1, dear viewers.
Very first episode was Cody and I going in depth on Book of Boba Fett. It had some good stuff, but overall it was kind of a mess. So that's number 3 for me.
Whew, this is tough. I mean, if we're gonna just do straight up Mandalorian as one show, then Mandalorian's number 1 still, because that has kind of rekindled my love for Star Wars after it was kind of not gone, but was low for quite a while. So that's got to be number 1 still. This is tough for 2. Geez, Boba Fett was so uneven at times, but I'm gonna slightly put
Don't you do
Boba
it.
Fett ahead
Don't you do it.
at
Oh my
number
God, he did
2.
it.
I can't help it. He's my favorite
Oh.
Star Wars character of all time. So just to show on him, who'd have thought we'd ever get that?
You
And
should.
he wasn't dead.
I mean, is he
maybe-
still your favorite Star Wars character even after that series though?
Maybe Mando's my favorite now. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
Frog.
it's-
Maybe Frog Mama was my favorite.
Frog
now.
Mom is the best.
So
Yeah, I feel like I disagree with Cody here. It's like the Boba Fett, they could have done it so much better, but they just did the character a little dirty there.
he
Just-
wrote a Rancor. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, he probably would have died had it not been for Mando, though.
He had a
True.
cool. I'm blanking on whatever race Chewie is at the moment here. Wookiee. He had a cool
Wookiee.
Wookiee on his army.
The cool Wookiee was pretty cool.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
But that's
ranking
not
wise,
Boba Fett. Listen, there are many great things in Book of Boba Fett that don't involve Boba Fett. The problem is, like Blue said, they did the character dirty. Like it just is not. The portrayal of Boba Fett himself is just not in any way, shape, or form like what you would expect based on his
Yeah.
previous appearances.
You didn't know he was the galaxy's most feared tax collector. Don't give me that.
yeah, I mean, you go from Vader telling the man point blank, no disintegrations, to we got to help the people out here. It's
he's a
not
man
ruled
of
by
people.
fear. It's like maybe grew soft. I'm like
That
come
was
on,
to set up season 2. Come on.
maybe.
Now
Maybe
he's
he
gonna
did.
snap.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Boba Fett comes in at the bottom for me. Like a lot of promise. Just I think a little under delivered. Probably just no fault of the acting that's in it, just more of the screenwriting. I think that's really where the shortcoming of where I had with Obi-Wan was probably due to the screenwriters and some plot holes that didn't make sense too much. And then Mandalorian, I feel like is just, fantastically solid. So I think that's been the best offering in terms of what Disney's put out.
Very formulaic, but I do enjoy it quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's like a Western Star Trek / I don't know something. But,
Star Wars has always been a space Western.
Yeah, I was trying
That's
to.
true.
I mean,
Well,
that one's more Western-y still, though. Like he's clearly just like the outlaw that goes from town to town.
Yeah.
I feel like
Or is
Star
that
Wars
Cad
is
Bane?
always-
Oh,
Oh, Cad Bane, also another character in the cartoon series that people loved and
oh man,
wiped his ass off the face of the planet. That was pretty fun.
sure did. Or did they?
or did they? Tick, 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 tick.
Well, gentlemen, I think we did it.
We made it.
We did it.
We did
Goodbye
it.
there.
Hello there.
Hello.
Goodbye. I just want Liam Nielsen to say, I will find you
Yes, that would've
in the
been
next season
fantastic.
where he's a ghost, but he's finding people and scaring them
I like it
as
as a cop.
cop detectives.
That's right. I like
Well,
it.
thank you all for tuning in and, smash that subscribe button, like,
yeah.
comment, subscribe.
Smash
and
it.
we'd love to know if you disagree with
yeah.
us too. But thanks for joining this evening's edition of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing.
What's our song style tonight, Chris?
Friends. Not disagreeing.
Disintegrating.
Pew, 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 pew. Clank. Goodbye there.